What would you like to know, Georgie?
Tell us about how you got into the gambling business.
It's that attitude and mentality of like, I'll do whatever it takes to get a foot in the door and get in the room, you know? Hold on, I've had startups fail, right? When a project doesn't work, no matter how smart you are, no matter how hard you try, you get fucking abused from everyone. If you mean by successfully mean like making a lot of money, the only way you can make a lot of money is by having.
So let's start things off. I'm George, for you guys that don't know, and that's Sam. And
Señor Tilt.
Señor Tilt.
Especially to George. Señor to George.
Oh yeah, madame. So why don't you go ahead and tell them a little bit backstory of you and how you got into, Monkey Tilt.
Once you address me properly.
All right.
Senor.
Senora.
Senor, I'd like to know.
All right, Senora.
What would you like to know, Georgie?
So why don't you tell us about how you got into the gambling business?
Yeah. I actually started with gambling. It started when I was a kid. So you know this, but we grew up in Vegas, me and my family. So my dad's job, one of his first jobs was in a casino. So my dad started as a cook in the casino, making like $8 an hour, grinded his way up, very small casino in Henderson. And my dad had a big love for gambling. So very early on, my dad taught us how to play poker. We played Texas Hold'em. That was like a family thing, like where we'd finish dinner and play Texas Hold'em. Played chess at a really young age. My dad loved backgammon, so I learned backgammon at a really young age. So I think our house was filled with a lot of gambling games. And my dad's favorite thing to do was bet on sports. And he was like the worst sports bettor on the planet. He's like the king of like the 3-leg parlays, 5-leg parlays. Yeah, like, and he'd have like the tickets.
The straight fish stuff.
Yo, dude, he'd have the tickets. Like we'd watch the Sunday, like every day, like when there was football on in our house, the TV was on like max volume. And we had a tiny apartment, right? So you could, it was in the living room, but you could hear it in like every bedroom. And the TV would be on, and my dad would sit there with his betting tickets, because they're all physical. And he'd have like a little pencil, like, so like on his 3-leg parlay, like when one of them won, he'd like check mark next to it and stuff. But my dad would like, he's always betting. And I was really intrigued by it. This is back before all the internet stuff, you used to get the betting lines in the newspaper, like the Las Vegas Review-Journal. We'd sit and pick games together. My dad would make me little $5 parlays and stuff. And so that was like, I got the itch real young. And then I was gambling. The first time I remember gambling was, you remember Pokemon cards? Yeah. Yeah, dude, we used to play for keeps. You know those Pokemon tournaments in the malls and stuff? I used to go there and we played those tournaments, and then afterwards we played these little side games when we were waiting for our parents to pick us up, and we played for keeps. So I've had the gambling gene from a super early age. My dad's an immigrant. We took he took education very, very seriously. So I didn't even, when you're raised in a household, you don't see, there was never an option not to get like straight A's, not to study. Like my dad would have my dad would physically beat me if I didn't get straight A's, right? So we took school really seriously. It helped that I liked school. Like I liked reading, I liked math. I was good at all those things. So school was kind of, pretty breezy for me, for more or less. And I went to a public high school in Las Vegas. I got a lot of help. I think that's an important part of anyone's journey who, if you came from like, a family with, no college education, no money, right? Like you need to have people help you out along the way. So there was I joined debate in high school. I had a lot of kids on the debate team helping mentor me through what to do, take AP classes, take these IB classes, enroll in this program. Those were the kids that actually got me into like SAT prep. We couldn't afford SAT classes or books or any of that stuff. And so this one guy in town was, nice enough to scholarship me through SAT classes. So you kind of have a little like people along the way that help you, teachers, kids that are older than you. There's some super successful kids that graduated from my high school, like the founders of Ramp, which is like a $9 billion tech company. A lot of people went on to be super successful. Like, a lot of kids went to Ivy League schools. Lots of kids ended up becoming lawyers and doctors and all that stuff. And so I got lucky. I went to like a good public school. My dad knew it was a good public school. Like he worked his ass off to put us in an apartment that was zoned for that public school. And that's how my story started. And I got into got into like most of the schools I applied to. The only school I remember wanting to go to, not getting into, was Harvard. I got waitlisted at Harvard. So I ended up going to Amherst College. I never visited it before I got there because we couldn't afford the trip. So my dad wanted me to go to USC because they were giving me a full scholarship and all that. And we drove down and we did the whole weekend. It was so dope. Like there's all these like chicks on the lawn in bikinis, and then like these frat guys throwing the football. Right? It's like literally out of a movie, right?
Yeah.
And my dad says to me, sometime on the trip, my dad's like, "This school is amazing. I'll come visit you every weekend." And I was like, "Dude, fuck that. Like, there's zero chance I'm gonna go to a school where my dad can visit me every weekend." And the guy who was mentoring me through the college process and the SATs, he just really liked Amherst. He thought Amherst was like one of the best schools in the country. So he pushed me to go to Amherst. And yeah, it was a good school for me. Like, I majored in neuroscience. I thought I was gonna be a doctor. So I did all my internships and stuff were geared towards medicine. And then I needed to make money because I was graduating with some debt to pay, all the money I borrowed to pay for my personal expenses and shit. So a lot of my friends were doing these finance internships to make money. I knew nothing about finance, right? Because Amherst is liberal arts, so you don't learn any finance classes to begin with. But I didn't know the first thing about any of that crap. Like I was just studying purely to be a doctor. And so I needed to ramp up on stuff. So there was a winter break that was coming up. And I knew that all the interviews started right after the winter break. So I stayed on campus during Christmas, right? And all I did was study. Like I had to learn accounting, like how to read a balance sheet, P&L, cash flow statement, how to model, how to value a company. I didn't know any of that shit. And I was interviewing against kids that went to Wharton and Stern and like these business focused schools. So I needed to like up my game, and I had like a month and a half to do it. So I was like cramming like crazy. And I'd show up to these interviews, and like the first few interviews went terribly. You can imagine, right? Like I had no idea what I was fucking talking about. So I figured it out, and I ended up getting an internship with a company called Fidelity. And that's like a global asset manager. And, to make a long story short, I ended up interning for them summer after my junior year. I was one of the few kids that got a job offer. And then I ended up working for those guys, started in their Boston office. But then I, traveled around the world with them: Singapore, Hong Kong, Tokyo, London, China, Jakarta, Sydney, Australia. And so I was able, I went from not ever getting really on a plane much, growing up, to then traveling all around the world, flying business class, staying in nice hotels. It was like a complete trip for me.
What were you doing for them?
So I was an equity analyst. So how my job started was when I interned that summer, they had me look at some industries and like write reports on the state of industries. So like one of the industries I got assigned was the telecommunications industry. And I was looking at things like small cell technology, upgrades of cellular networks, things like that, things that I had previously had no background about. Right. And what I loved about the job was it felt like you were still in college. Like I felt like I was getting paid a really huge amount of money to just learn shit, right? And then yes, of course, like you're learning stuff so that people can invest money and action and earn money on your, on your knowledge base, right? You're developing a thesis and stuff like that. But it was like one of the coolest things. And one of the Fidelity's philosophies was, we're going to take whatever your academic background is, and we're not going to let you focus on that. So the natural progression for me to come out of a neuroscience, neuroscience, all you're doing is reading Nature papers, like prepping to, either go to medical school or get a PhD. Right. So it would have been very easy for me to go into biotechnology and just read research papers all day, right? And then invest in biotech stocks. But they're like, no. If you do that, then you're not going to learn anything about economic cycles. You're not going to learn anything about businesses, so they wanted me to start doing something different. So my very first rotation, I covered industrials and then I covered commodities. Oh, sick. Which is funny because me and you invest in all these commodity stocks now, and it's like it's still in my DNA. So I was traveling to the reason why I was traveling to some of those places, like I was traveling to China looking at steel, like steel mills and like aluminum factories and shit like that, bauxite mines. Because like aluminum is made from, I don't know if you even know this, but you mine this stuff out of the ground called bauxite. And then there's a chemical process that converts it to alumina, and then that converts it to aluminum. And this is stuff like I never ever thought about. Copper mining. I was looking at going to these mining conferences in Western Australia, a completely new world for me, right? And so I learned a lot of, I learned supply demand. I learned about speculation. I learned about, trading commodities. It's crazy. I had no idea I'd be in crypto in the future, about how much carryover there was from trading commodities to trading crypto. So, it was just random, to be honest. And that was how I started my career. I was very good at it. Like I had a natural aptitude for that. Even I think, you know, I was much better at that than I would have been in medicine. And then I moved over to you know, I started getting really good at what I did, and I wanted more and more money, and I wanted more and more responsibility. Fidelity's a really big organization, so like I think I had a very good career there had I stayed, but I just wanted everything now. You know, it's kind of, you know, what any young guy in their 20s that's over ambitious. So I left to a fund called Platinum Asset Management, which was a Soros fund, and that was where I became the gaming guy, and that's where my career in gaming started.
How'd you get good at like tech and computers if you were just like, you know, just doing neuroscience and
Yeah, I wouldn't say I never got good at tech and computers. I think like if I think about my understanding of anything in life, I'm pretty good at understanding, like researching and intensively understanding surface level enough to enough to invest, enough to manage a company, but not so deep in the weeds that I'm like revising code or you know, doing that kind of thing. You know, like I'm not very involved in the technical aspects of any of these businesses. I'm always much more involved from a strategy level and you know, strategy, product, that kind of.
when people when hear you say that you've built online casinos in the past and stuff like that, they I think that they automatically think like, oh,
That
he's
I'm
a
like
coder,
that I'm a coder.
coder
Yeah.
or like a developer.
No,
So
no,
like
no, no.
explain a little bit like what you mean by that. Like
Yeah, well, like if you think about where did my knowledge of online gambling start? It started when I was on the finance side, right? So when I was at this fund, I had, you know, we had a sleeve of the fund. The fund was like a 25, $30 billion fund. And we had a pretty decent sized sleeve of that fund for consumers. Consumer was restaurants, hotels, uh, clothing brands, and casinos, right? And so at that time, the really big thematic was Macau was built up, right? So the big theme in gaming was everyone had just made a boatload of money out of Macau. So all these guys came in. I don't know if you know this whole story, but Macau used to be run by like there's one guy who kind of owned every casino in Macau, and then they opened it up to a licensing process. And like the guys who own the Venetian, the Palazzo, or you know, used to own the Venetian Palazzo, company called Vegas Sands. They won a bunch of properties. They opened up Venetian in Macau. Wynn got a license, MGM got a license. But a lot of the way Steve Wynn became a multi-billionaire, the way Sheldon Adelson became so rich was Macau. Macau was everything, right? And when I jumped into my seat, and it coincided with a really interesting time in China's history. Like China from the early 2000s to about 2015 just went straight up into the right. So they were building like crazy, like just building after building after building was going up, and the government was just slushing money into the economy. So many people were getting rich in Asia. And what happened is, okay, all these people who didn't used to have money now have money. That obviously affects economies, right? They pour money into what? Luxury goods, right? So all these luxury goods stores were popping up all over Asia, making shit tons of money, and casinos were making a lot of money. Then there was this crackdown on corruption from President Xi, where he started putting government people in all of the casinos in Macau, in the VIP rooms and stuff, because I think they started arresting people. Basically, people were taking bribes, or allegedly were you know, like, okay, my buddy's in the government and there's a contract to bid for, and 5 of us are bidding for it. So I go to my buddy and I go, okay, if you give me the contract and I make 200 million bucks, I'll give you a bag of $20 million in Macau, right? And then this is allegedly, right? And so they would, you know, go and give them the cash in Macau, and these guys would gamble it, and then they would take it from Macau and take it somewhere else, right? And buy a house in Australia or Vancouver or Los Angeles or some shit like that. So, you know, they obviously there was a lot of people, you know, wanted to crack down on that. So when I was jumping in my seat, that was happening. So all these stocks got crushed, right? Because of this crackdown on corruption. And so I was able to kind of come in fresh and go, like, yeah, there was some money that came through Macau that probably isn't going to come back. I mean, at one point at peak, Macau was doing 37 billion in gaming revenue. The Las Vegas Strip does 6. So think about that. Like some tiny island off the coast of Hong Kong
was doing more,
was doing 6 times the amount, is it 6 to 7 times the amount of revenue than the entire Las Vegas Strip. So it's crazy, right? Now that number came down, but I think a lot of people were freaking out and saying, oh my God, like Macau's dead. Like it's never going to come back. And I looked at it and I was like, there is a real story here, the growth of the Chinese middle class. And if you go and spend time in Asia, these guys gamble way more than the people in Las Vegas do. And it was, you know,
Vegas has come up a lot in the last 10 years. But back then in 2015, if you walked on the floor of the Wynn, which is like probably the nicest property in Vegas, you would see like $25 a hand, $25 a hand, maybe see $100 a hand, right? I'm talking on the floor, not in the high limit room, right? Dude, if you walk on the floor in Macau back in these days, you'd be like, we're talking like, so when I say $100 a hand, I would say the minimum bet was like $1,000 a hand. We're talking for normal people, right? Like, and they took that shit seriously. Like when Chinese go to play baccarat, they're not getting ripped, like they're not getting drunk and
Go there with their notepad.
Bro, they got like
They got
wear their
the
lucky,
board,
wear
but they got their
lucky
own notes
outfits.
going on.
They like have a routine, like a very serious routine.
Lucky socks.
Yeah, but they pay attention to the patterns, right? They like, yeah, dude, it's like an all day affair. Actually, when I was a kid, when I was 25, and I was living in Hong Kong for like 2 months or something. I used to get on the ferry and go to Macau because that's what you can get on a ferry or a helicopter. I used to get on the ferry, it's an hour-long ferry, and the ferry was packed Saturday mornings, bro, and like everyone was going to Macau to gamble. It's a lot of fun. And so, but basically, you know, I saw this and I was like, this is a very real trend, and so I wanted to own. I wanted to own a piece of what I thought had the most leverage to a Macau recovery. And that was the Wynn, right? So the Wynn not only had Wynn Macau, but they were opening up a huge property called Wynn Palace in Cotai. And so I convinced my boss to buy, dude, I think we owned $500-600 million in Wynn stock. And this is very unusual. I was one of the youngest guys to ever get hired at this shop by like 5 or 6 years. And then there was this, kind of joke that like this guy never bought any recommendations for young guys for the first 2 years of their career. So the first 2 years he'd be sitting there, hey, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. And he would just ignore you, right? And he was a self-made multi-billionaire, very famous guy in Australia, obviously good personal friends with George Soros and all this stuff. So it's like, I obviously he didn't need to listen to me, who was I? I was some 25-year-old punk kid. For some reason, he really appreciated my perspective on gaming because I grew up around it. So he knew that I had a good financial background, but I think why he really was intrigued by, he knew that I understood the inner workings of a casino and how these things work, and just because I spent so much time growing up around them, the culture of them. So yeah, so that's how my story started, right? And so then if you think about it, I looked at brick and mortar properties in Asia. There was properties popping up in Philippines, Singapore, and we could spend so much time talking about all those stories and how fascinating they are. Vladivostok, Russia, I invested in a casino. Putin did these like integrated entertainment zones. I invested in a casino in Vladivostok, Russia. Do you even know where that is? Vladivostok, Russia. It's on like the southeast tip of Russia. It's like it almost borders the Chinese border.
Okay.
It's like at the town, like when you go drive in the town, the signs are half in Russian, half in Chinese, right? Okay. So I've looked at casino properties all over the world. I looked at like riverboat casinos, like the regional kind of casinos in the US, the Vegas Strip properties. I mean, everywhere you can imagine, I've looked at them. The stuff in all throughout the Europe, the online stuff. Canada has like these racetrack casinos and stuff. It's just crazy. So I spent like years. Think about this. You get to your desk at like 7, 8 in the morning, and all you do until like 8, 9 o'clock is read. And then you interview, like if you're running $25-30 billion, every management team has time to talk to you, right? Because these guys all get compensated on their share price. Like They don't want people buying their stock. So I'd sit in this room and I'd get a coffee and I'd just sit there reading for hours. Just like, and these are like, I was smarter then than I am now, like, because now I'm so focused on my business. But back then I was like kind of like a jack of all trades. Like I knew a lot of it. I would be talking to, CEO of company X, and he's competing with company Y. And I'd be talking to him for an hour and a half, after reading his annual reports, his quarterly conference call transcripts, hearing how he thinks about business, how he thinks about gaming. And then I would go talk to his competitor like the next day. And then I'd say, how do you think about it? And so
get both sides.
100%. If you imagine like talking to me and then going and talking to the Rubeck guys and talking to the Steak guys, and like, you know what I mean? Like it's
hearing how everyone does things.
Right. And why they're doing things differently. And then you say, oh, well, it's interesting because like you're thinking in your head, well, this guy just said he doesn't want to do things this way, and this guy does want to do things this way. So someone told me one time, no matter what you do in life, you should start with a background in business because it's so key to everything that you do. I just by complete luck, ended up as an equity analyst because I almost took a job. I thought I wanted to do investment banking. So I almost did like the whole Goldman Sachs TMT investment banking route, which would have pipelined me into like private equity or venture capital in San Francisco. My story would be completely different.
You would be like
I don't know.
or something.
Who knows, right? Who knows?
Yeah.
But like I ended up as an equity analyst, which I didn't even know. You know, growing up, you don't even know this job exists, right? You know, coming from my background.
Right.
And I was like, dude, I'm getting paid to learn everything I possibly can about casinos, so that if we want to invest money in the space, my boss can, you know, I'm like an encyclopedia of knowledge. And then after a couple of years doing that, I knew that I wanted to be an operator. Like I just was watching these guys on the other side of the fence, like these operators, like, you know, the Steve Wynn's of the world, and like, you know, the layer below Steve Wynn, and being able to travel around the world, interact with different cultures, eat different foods, you know, even the way different cultures game, right? Like in Japan, you know, have you been to Japan before?
No.
They play this game called pachinko, and it's like crazy. It's like the pachinko economy, if it was like a gambling market, it would be one of the biggest gambling markets in the world. It's a very gambling-like game. It's somehow not categorized as gambling, but it's a very gambling-like game. And then you learn like, dude, and then, you know, you spend time with like, there's these guys that own online casinos in India, and online casinos, online books in the Middle East, or big online stuff out in Europe. And it's a huge cast of characters. They're all enormously wealthy, but they all get to do some really fun and exciting stuff. And I just thought, man, it's so much cooler to build a business than it is to like invest in a business.
Yeah. And when you left that company,
The fund, yeah.
the Platinum, what was it? Platinum?
Mm-hmm.
After you left Platinum, what did you do then?
I was like an MD of a boutique investment bank. That was like my make money time. Like, so I still wanted to I wanted to become an executive in gaming, but no one wanted to hire a 25-year-old.
But you realized you wanted to be in gaming while you were working at Platinum.
Yeah, while I was at Platinum. But yeah, no, I wanted, when I was at Platinum, I would come to Vegas and I'd meet with these guys that were running like finance departments or like you know, I wanted to be, I was asking everyone, how do I become the guy who's running the Wynn? Not the company, the actual property, like the general manager of the Wynn or the general manager of the Bellagio, right? Like, how do I become that guy? And they go, oh, a lot of those guys started in operations. I don't know if you looked at like what an operations person makes, like at a low level operations, but it's like dirt. Like you make nothing, right? And I was like a big shot at this like hedge fund. I was making hedge fund money, and hedge fund, I don't want to like throw numbers around on a podcast, but it's a lot of money, right? And at this point in my life, I'd gotten used to, you know, I think at this point I was married. I had my first kid on the way. Like I had real expenses. I was helping support my family and stuff. And so not my wife and kid, my other, you know, my family, right? And you know, it was not like a position. I couldn't just go you know, work at the Venetian or the Wynn as like a low level operations guy and, you know, make entry level money. Like it just was never going to happen. So that wasn't to me at that time. And I explored a lot of opportunities. Like I was throwing in applications to like these positions, but everyone wanted like X number of years of experience. So I was like, all right, fuck that. So I did this little stint where I was helping like raise money for like early stage companies, mining, software, whatever. Met these two guys in Australia, did that, which made more money that year than I'd ever made in any of the years before. But it was just very hustly work, you know. It was like the low end of the market. You're just doing deal after deal after deal. It's grinding. It's all volume. And it's so different than being an equity analyst. It's like you don't really care whether something goes up, down. So you're just kind of making commission, right? So you're raising capital, charging a fee, taking some warrants in the stock. The stock goes up and does great, awesome. You make a lot of extra money, but you know you're really getting paid on the transactions, right? So that work wasn't work I was super passionate about, but it was fun because I did make a lot of money doing it, right? So then basically it got to a point where that business started kind of like, I started making less money in it and I wanted to come back home to the US. I was living overseas at that point for like 6 years. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to come back to the US and figure it out, right? I'd make some money, have some money saved. My family wants to go back to the US. Let me just take everyone back to the US and figure it out. So I came back to Vegas, which is kind of close to around the time I met you, by the way. Came to Vegas like late 2018. Mm-hmm. And then no one's hiring people in November. Like it's like it's the holidays, right? Like everyone's like, okay, well, it's talking like late January. So I was like, fuck it, all right, I'll just like hang out, golf, go like learn how to ski. So I just did a lot of fun stuff. I got caught up on being a person because like my story, but like I worked 100-hour plus weeks pretty much my whole 20s. So I didn't really have much of a life. So I was like, kind of living a little bit of a life. And then when I started getting back in the mix, this guy I worked with in Asia, Aaron Fisher, and Aaron Fisher was like, the Fisher, the man. But he was like the big dog. Like he was like this banking big dog in Hong Kong. He helped IPO pretty much every single company that IPO'd on the Hong Kong exchange from Macau, like had a property in Macau. Like Aaron was involved with it. So the Win, the Venetian, there was this property that was going to open in Macau called Louis the 13th. Like the
liquor.
Yeah, bro. There was an actual casino that was going to open up called Louis the 13th. Crazy stuff, right? But Aaron was like the guy. So then MGM was ran by a guy named Jim Murrin, who's the CEO. He hired Aaron as his chief strategy officer. And then Aaron calls me and says, hey, like, I didn't even know you were in Vegas. Like, I thought you were still in Australia. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm trying to find, we were just talking shit, whatever. And I said, he's like, oh, let's go grab lunch. He had no idea I didn't have a job, right? So we go at the lunch, having lunch at Spago on the lake. And he's like, halfway through the lunch, he goes, oh shit. He's like, you need a job. And I was like, I don't need a job. Because I was thinking I would just go back into like working in private equity or something in the summer. Mm-hmm. And he goes, no. You should come work for me. He's like, we just are now trying to figure out how to get an online gambling because they overturned the ban on online gambling. And he goes, it's a really exciting time to be here. Because the thing is, I don't really have there's not like a formal job. So there was some bullshit job that was like hiring at the time. The pay cut, dude, like the pay cut I took from the year before, it was like 90%. Like I took like a 90% pay cut to go from what I was doing in Australia to like, but it was like whatever. So I, I didn't need the money at that point. So I said, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. So I took this job. I came in, and it was a lot of stuff, dude. We were talking. It was strategy. It was finance. It was some investor relations. And I got to work with him and a guy named Scott Butera a lot there. But that was how I learned. That was how I cut my teeth in online gambling. And if you want to fast forward it, like I did a bunch of different stuff for those guys. But I was able to go into all the meetings with them. Like Aaron, Scott, and Jim Murrin were very cool about giving me a seat at the table for all of these deals. And dude, we almost bought DraftKings, right? Like, I was at a seat at the table when, we were looking at stuff like that, or doing big deals with the telco companies, or there was just so much going on in the online gaming space back then. So it was a pretty cool place to be. And then during COVID happened, and Aaron got, and basically like Jim left MGM, and then me and Aaron, all of us, pretty sure we're all going to get fired. We're going to clean house. So I left MGM and needed a job. And so I took a job with this guy who owns like a slots company, was a publicly listed slots company. And their biggest investor was a big private equity group. And so I was helping him explore the online gambling space for investment opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I was also trying to raise some money to start more or less, like I was going to start Monkey Tilt back then. I was going to try to start a big online casino back then. And I was partnering with Scott and Aaron to try to raise some money. And then as I was doing that, Caesars gets bought, and I get a phone call, and they're looking for like a young guy to like, run strategy for them and product. And I was like, and dude, there was 3 guys on the team. So I was like, I came into the team, and I was like right there. It's just me and 3 other guys that were responsible for pretty much building that online gambling business from scratch. So, yeah.
I mean, that was exciting. How old were you when you were in that position?
I just turned 30.
Okay.
I literally turned 30. I remember this because you remember I was in COVID. You weren't supposed to throw like parties of 4 people or more, all those stupid rules. I threw the biggest party. I don't even want to dog out the property that I threw this at, but they helped. They knew like they helped me get around the rules. So they gave me the entire floor. Right? So like, I think you were there, right? Am I 30?
Maybe.
No. Or
no,
were we not boys back then?
I don't think I was there.
Oh, I have some great stories to share. I'll tell you when the podcast isn't going. But No, basically, they gave us the whole floor. I threw the most crazy 30th birthday rager ever, like the best. And everyone was in COVID. No one had partied like for a year.
The first party I went to of yours was like
Was wild, right?
Kiki Island one.
No, but do you remember the first party you went to after COVID? Like, I just feel like everyone was like, wanting to go crazy.
But bro, New York was like nuts even during COVID.
Yeah.
Like during COVID, bro, people were renting like office spaces in buildings and turning them into nightclubs.
No way.
Straight up. Like there was like nightclubs that people didn't know about, but obviously everyone who's in the scene, like we have like our nightlife group chats and shit where like all the kids will like type in like the exclusive shit that no one knows about.
Right.
Yeah. So like if you're in one of those, you knew everything. Like there was like straight rappers getting booked and having like performances in like clubs that were just made out of someone's office. It was nuts. But
yeah, I mean, so I remember because Caesars wanted me to start right away, and I was like, oh, I should probably let this party happen. And I started in September, and so it was right when I turned 30.
Dope.
And it was like my biggest job I'd ever had. And by the way, this was the job that I would have liked to have leaving Platinum, like big executive, kind of more or less like a C-level role in the online gaming business.
But Caesars was quick. You weren't there long, right?
It was wild, man. Talk about like everything went so fast that year. Like I joined, I can't remember if the stock was like 40s, maybe 50. I got these milestones. Like I got paid. The way I negotiated my contract was I took a base salary that for what my position was a pretty modest base salary. I negotiated a stock grant package, but where like I'd get stock every $10 a share, but that there was like a balloon, like, and this was people were DMing saying like, give me business advice. I'd say like the things people underestimate in negotiations are to be whatever successful mean. If you mean by successful, you mean like making a lot of money, the only way you can make a lot of money is by having upside in something, right? Like you're never going to get rich on salary. Like you probably can hear, I mean, there's 2 million YouTubes that explain this and shit like that, right?
Try to negotiate equity and stuff.
You always should get some equity or some token or some, if you're in a position to negotiate for equity. And if you're not in a position to negotiate equity, what that means is you haven't made yourself indispensable enough. So the pre-step is you should be someone, like people always want to ask for money before they've added any value. And that's for anyone who's a boss, that's the biggest turnoff ever. When someone comes to your office, they've been working for like 2 months, they're like, hey, I need more money. It's like, bro, so do I. Like, like, what are you going to do for me? Like, everyone needs more money, right? But
if you make yourself hard to replace,
the people that I pay a lot of money to, the people that make a fortune working for me, are the people where if they got hit by a bus tomorrow, I would puke. Like I wouldn't know what I'd do without them, kind of thing, right? And you should be that person, because when you're that person, like when you're the person that your boss can't imagine a day in his life without you, you're just gonna get paid. Like you don't even need to ask. Like it's just gonna happen. And if for some reason it doesn't just happen, then you do go ask. But it's like, be indispensable is like the biggest advice. Anyways, so I wasn't, I would say, indispensable in that role at Caesars, but I brought a lot to the table. And look, they didn't want, the economy was terrible, if you remember. Like the online gaming was doing great, but everyone was on like government assistance and stuff. So it wasn't like a great time to be negotiating for a job, right? And so I was like, well, I can't ask for like a lot of like cash salary. But what I will do is ask for a lot of like, hey, if the stock goes up a bunch, right? My bosses will make a bunch of money. And so I'm going to ask for a balloon package at like, I can't remember what it was, like $105, $110 a share. Stock, like, dude, it was like had to double or something. And any CFO or CEO could get down with that because they're going to make a fortune if the stock goes there. And then, I mean, how the story ends. Like stock went to like $120 a share. And so, I mean, and then that was when I got super into crypto.
Yeah.
Like I got into crypto, I guess in 2017, but then I got really into it right before COVID started.
Which was a really good time to get into it.
The luckiest time ever, right?
Yeah.
And I just had that. I got connected to the right people, made the right friends. They put me in the right. I got downloaded Telegram because everyone was all the crypto people were on Telegram. Like America was on Telegram yet, right? Unless you were in crypto. And I started getting put in these Telegram chats, and next thing you know, I'm, it was DeFi summer 2020 is what crypto people call it, but it was like you couldn't lose. Like you literally couldn't lose.
I
like,
thought I was a genius.
Every
I told you my story. I was in Miami with Zed and Joe, just blowing money, like looking at my wallet, and then like weeks later, back in New York, the shit is gone.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of those stories, but for me, I had like one thing I got lucky with, and I think this is like good, just general advice for people is like, when you're going to do something, find like the people who are the smartest in the space or the most successful in the space and latch onto them. Cause I hadn't done anything in crypto at that point. So I met some really young founders that had already made fortunes. And I said, hey, like, I'm making all this money at Caesars and through all these other gigs I'm doing. I want to be deploying this intelligently. I don't want to be getting scammed and stuff. And a lot of these people, dude, will give you advice. If you're cool to them and you do stuff for them. And for me, like, it's very easy to do things for like, okay, you want to come to Vegas? Like, let me set you up in Vegas and do this and that. And you do solid things for people to do solid things back. And so I had a lot of good mentors in crypto super early. That was like everything, by the way, in life. It's like I get lucky with mentors, like a lot. But I had some good mentors in crypto.
You got to put yourself in those positions to get lucky with the mentors.
You have to have a mindset of,
and you got to be able to go and meet these people. Like, put yourself in the position to go talk to them.
It's a very good point.
Like, because it's not. I don't think you weren't just sitting there and they just walked in on you. Like, you put yourself in the.
Every single time I get opportunities to go to dinners,
I
events,
always take them.
Super Bowl, this or that, or whatever, Formula One, whatever it is, I go to like everything.
Me too.
And even that's a hard one to explain to some people who think that you're just like partying all the time or having fun. No, it's like that's not at all. This is like work, right? Because you never know
who you're gonna meet there.
You never know who you're gonna meet. You never know what's gonna come of it.
For me to meet you, I was working at some company with your brother.
Yeah.
And then I would hear your name in the office and stuff, and then we start talking through the phone, Instagram, whatever, FaceTime. And then you were just like, yo, I'm having a Super Bowl party. Why don't you pull up?
Yeah.
And then I came. I was like, yeah, hell yeah. I'm going to go meet Sam. His friends are probably successful. I want to, and like, I met a bunch of cool people there too.
And you slept on the couch.
Yeah, I slept on the couch.
That's the other thing. You slept on the couch, like, because I didn't have any rooms. And you're like, oh, I'll just sleep on the couch. Like, it's that attitude and mentality of like, I'll do whatever it takes to get a foot in the door and get in the room. You know.
At that party, there was a bunch of important people there from DraftKings and
it was like. It was filled with like celebrities, professional athletes, casino executives. Yeah, there's a lot of people there.
And then
even people there that weren't big deals yet that now are big deals. That because their online gambling company took off, or whatever.
And now look at us 4 years later.
I never stop with this stuff. I think I think you just never. I still don't turn down these opportunities and events. And obviously, I'm in a way different position.
Every time I suggest if you want to meet somebody,
I'm usually pretty down. I'm usually pretty down, right? Because you never know what's going to come of it. You just got to manage your time, but yeah. You good? But yeah, what were we talking about before that? We're talking about
putting yourself in the position to meet these people.
But the mentors in crypto, right? Mm-hmm. So I got into like all these really good projects, and then I was in NFTs really early, dude. Like I pulled some money. It was a decent chunk of money. CryptoPunks, apes, you name it. Like we had all of it. Everything like went up really fast. We made money off of it. So no, it was good. It was a really good time. And then obviously
like Manifold days.
Well, so I co-founded Manifold when I was still at Caesars. When I was just as I was leaving Caesars.
Nice.
Hold on. I've had startups fail, right? We don't need to like talk excessively about those. But it's not like everything I've touched, whenever anyone tells their story, it's all of the stuff that worked. Oh, I did this, I did that. And all of a sudden it just magically flows together. But it skips all the like times when you're sitting there with your stomach fucking crunched up, thinking you're about to go broke, and like all the times when like everyone fucking hates you. Like when a project doesn't work, no matter how smart you are, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you put your ass in line, you get fucking abused from everyone. Like it's crazy. You're a fucking idiot. You're a piece of shit. I never should have invested money with you. Blah 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 blah. And despite people are very emotional with like how they invest, and then myself included, right? Like I fight that animal urge, but like if people invested rationally, then there wouldn't be as much opportunity as there is in the world, right? So I think if you ask me like, oh man, like does that does that give you PTSD to think about that time when you had that shitty company and it like just wasn't working and everything you tried it wouldn't work? No way. Some of my funniest, I was actually a week ago, and Monkey Tilt by almost all standards is doing very well. Now, we're still really young. We haven't accomplished anything real yet, but everything directionally is going the right way. And two guys that I brought from a startup that didn't do as well to Monkey Tilt. We were talking last week and we were reminiscing about the time where we had to call like 17 different suppliers and negotiate our bills down because otherwise we were going to go BK, right? Like we literally spent 2 days like in a living room huddled over a table, like talking to lawyers and accounting, like, hey guys, you're going to have to take a 30% haircut here. Yeah, it's either that or you chase us in collections court. Like, what's it going to be, right? And these are miserable conversations to have. But you gotta, when you're a founder, you gotta fight for your investors. You gotta fight for your people, right? And not everyone can always win. That's what they don't tell you. And so, those moments, dude, like we would be sitting there over a table, just clawing tooth and nail to just survive, and then we'd go out and toss the football outside. And it just, like this moment of huge relief, like when you lose a lot of money in the casino and you and your buddy both lose and you walk out of the casino and you're like,
at least we did it together.
Yeah, at least we're together, like misery loves company, right? I think those moments will never be bad memories in my life. They're quite good memories. And the reason why I'm such a fucking killer, like people know this about me at Monkey Tilt. Like people know I don't tolerate crap. I fire fast. Like I'm super hard on my staff. I raise the bar like a lot and then raise it again and raise it again. I'm not an easy person to negotiate against because I've been screwed over so many times that I know now, like, hey, this is like, these guys are saying they need this, but they really only need this, and like, you get more comfortable navigating the world and you become more dangerous.
And you read people way easier after someone.
You read people better, but you also know like where your cushion is and stuff. And you know how to do better long-term business. You just become more mature, right? And that's the one thing when I'm investing my personal capital, very, very, very rarely do I back a young founder. Like when I say young, I mean like early 20s, because they haven't been fucked over enough, They haven't been like desperate. They haven't been hurt, Like I think those scars help a lot. I look for people who like, if I'm going to back a company, I want someone in like their 30s. Ideally someone who this isn't their first startup, it's their like third or fourth startup. Even if I don't care if the first two are successful or not successful, I just need it to not be your first, right? Because first time founders, man, there's just stuff you have to do. I mean, dude, like setting up HR processes in a company, setting up payroll, setting up tax stuff, setting up lawyers, auditors, dealing with like, your emails and your systems, and now you're pen testing for, if you're in tech, you're pen testing for your platform. People are trying to hack you externally, people are trying to hack you internally. I'm talking to, dude, these are things that are just like blocking and tackling. I haven't even talked about building a business yet. Like I haven't talked about like tackling a market opportunity and how hard that is. But like, so building a business is super hard. And like when people like hit me up and like I have the time to talk to them and they're like, hey, like I want some advice as like a founder. Usually my advice is like, don't found a company. Like, no, like why would you? Like most of them fail. Unless you have like incredible superpowers in something that you need as a founder. Like for me, one of my things is I think I'm a very good macro thinker. Like I think I'm very good at saying, okay, here's like an opportunity. So like when I started Manifold or co-founded Manifold, right? I didn't have the idea for Manifold. It was actually like this, it was Jay that had the idea for Manifold. He brought me in as a co-founder. His whole thesis was like crypto markets are highly inefficient. Quant strategies will be an important part of the market ecosystem, down the road. And so we're really early. And so we should create a quant fund. And, there's a better than not chance that we make money. And he already had some things that worked, right? He already had some strategies that worked. For me, that was a very common, that's the macro of that makes a lot of sense. Underlying markets growing, new entrant into the market, should be able to take some market share, should be able to make, that makes sense to me. you look at Aether, and like Aether was same situation, like building tooling and software for institutions that want to execute on a more on a level more analogous to how they execute in traditional markets, right? So all of that made sense to me. And again, anything in the crypto market I wanted exposure to because the crypto market's growing so fast. Liquidity is growing and all that stuff. Now, there were speed bumps in the crypto stuff that, and that's something as an early founder you don't realize too. You can get, with Manifold was crushing it. And then we wake up one day and SBF, and FTX and this whole like literally destroyed the crypto market. Like I'm talking overnight, every single crypto company had to fire like 50 to 80% of their staff. It didn't matter how smart you are, didn't matter how good your business was. It was just crypto winter, and it was tough. And that happened right before Christmas. So like I was laying people off. During the holidays, which, as you know me as a person, like that's a very tough thing for me to do, right? And so those battle scars are very helpful because, like, as I'm building Monkey Tilt, I think if I was 25, I'd be like, oh my God, we're crushing it. We need to go spend all this money. We need to go sign all these celebrities. Because, all these, by the way, when you run a company like Monkey Tilt, you get every bozo and their mom has an idea for you on how to run your business. Oh, you need to sign this guy. You need to sign that guy. Oh, you need to be doing this. You need to be doing that. And everyone wants to introduce you to someone that's just trying to ask you for money, right? So, I know this guy who owns this club, or I know this guy who owns this restaurant, I know this guy who owns this brand, and all these guys are asking for his money at the end of the day, right? So I think in your 20s, you get really excited. You just want to do everything. Oh, yeah, I'll do all this stuff. And I think when you get older, you say, okay, this might actually be good down the road, but not now. This is good in 6 months, or this is good in 18 months. I think that maturity is really important. The ability to say no to things, the ability to stay calm when it's easy to get excited, the ability to stay calm when it's easy to get ridiculously depressed, like when we get hacked or exploited or whatever it is, right? So I think age and experience matters a lot in startups.
I don't think someone will really feel the actual feelings of that unless they have their own business one day. You know what I mean?
The getting kicked in your dick feeling.
The getting kicked in your dick is an understatement.
Yeah, I mean, like it's sickening.
It's cut. It feels like it's cut off.
Nights and nights, dude. I mean, look at what happened. This is all now coming out now, but we were debanked, right? So one of my first startups in crypto was in the U.S. and we got debanked. Like we literally got called by our banks and said, "We're closing your accounts, bro." We had institutions that like could withdraw money, and now how are we going to get them their money? Like, you know what I mean? Like, dude, I couldn't sleep. I was sick. Like I was honestly sick to my stomach. And like, when you got something like FTX happens, our fund had actually performed extremely well through that whole year, like extremely well. And people are just telling you, hey, we need all of our money back. It's like, wait, we've been crushing it. Yeah, we don't give a fuck. We need money because we're getting crushed everywhere else. You're like, man, dude, this is tough, And then you got to lay people off because, well, like, look, all the money that you were supposed to be managing and collecting fees on, now you're not managing it. And now you can't afford to pay these people. You want to raise money because you want to say to investors, hey, like, look at this brilliant business we have. Look how smart we are. And investors go, yeah, dude, I don't care. Like, I'm not touching crypto for 2 years or something. Like, that's, so like no one has your back. And you're just like, you feel so lonely and so like scared, You have to understand that there's a lot of luck in everything, right? So the markets are psychological animals. So markets go in heavy cycles. So sometimes just the luck of when you start a company matters a lot. Like look at Stake. Stake founded 7 years ago. There's like nothing. There was nothing remotely like it, right? So like they just ate all the pie, and then COVID happened, and like no one could gamble at casinos, so they all gambled online. And Stake was like well known. So like Stake went from making like 100 million a year to making billions a year, like in a matter of like 24 months, right? So I think sometimes timing helps a lot. Of course, you have to be prepared for that opportunity, but like the timing helps a lot. Like in a parallel universe, I tell this to people all the time, like there are startups that I founded that might have become $20 billion companies and ended up, I sold them for cheap or whatever. Just because timing was a little off, but timing is a big part of the whole equation. So look, I think, okay, if you talk to a professional poker player, professional sports bettor, an entrepreneur, they always talk about the focus on the process and the journey, not the outcome. The reason why is because there's so much statistical variance, right? So let's just say you're getting stuff in with a 55, 60% edge. and you're going, you're swinging like a one of the best hitters in a professional baseball. What do they bat? Like a 350, 400? The best, what? 300 is like insane, right? Okay, great. So you're striking out. So what does that mean? You're striking out 2/3 of the time? Yeah, exactly. Right. So like that's the whole, I think that's the whole premise and idea is that like, you can't, I mean, you're going to strike out a bunch. You just got to keep swinging. Right. So I don't think I've ever been discouraged. Some failures hurt and sting way more than others. And then some people are so stupid that they have a hard time separating, this guy failed because he's an idiot, or this guy failed because extraneous variables or circumstances were just overwhelming, right? And, you know, fuck those guys. Like, who cares, right? You can be miserable now for a short period of time, and then when you're an adult, everything comes easy, or you can have a lot of fun right now for a short period of time, and then you're miserable the rest of your life. Like, which one do you want, right? And that was my dad's, is the trade-off. My dad said, look, you put the time in now to reap the rewards later, or you fuck around now and then you pay the price later. And that was my dad's big thing. Of course, what it does is it creates a workaholic. You know me, I'm a workaholic. So I think now it's just too deeply conditioned. But I don't know what my internal race is, because I don't think it's a dollar money amount. It always becomes something new. Like right now, it's to build Monkey Tilt into a multi-billion-dollar company. I'd like to be a top 3 online casino globally. That's my legitimate goal, and I'm not going to stop till I get there. And we're building this entertainment empire alongside Monkey Tilt. And ask me in a year or two, what's my goal? And then I might be saying, oh, to build Monkey Tilt into a $50 billion media conglomerate. I don't know. Like, I actually don't know. But I just get, I get squirrel like ish with like.
You kind of see some photons hitting your eye. You know what I mean? Like some light coming through, and then you just follow through the idea, see what seems to be flowing.
I chase stuff for sure. I get real. Yeah, I think, look, everyone's different, but for me, I think there's just too many cool things to do. And I'm sure even if Monkey Tilt becomes worth $20, $30 billion, whatever it becomes, I promise you I'll find something else. All right. Well, much love, guys. We'll see you next week.